The man with the controls.
Here we go. Yes. Hey, everybody. Mike McGinnis here. Real honored to have the team. And Richard's called it that. The band is back together. Here we are. And yes, Jeff Tebow, Tom Williams, Richard Hewson here. And today, what we're really going to talk about, is the fact is just that. It's been 30 years. And the thing that we all had in common was this incredible experience in our life, of which we crossed paths a lot during this 4 or 5 year period, in which there was this spiritual group that really connected us. It included a lot of conferences, talks, workshops, amazing people. And we talked about Tom Sawyer and near-death experience and so many others that sort of helped to mold our minds at that point, open our minds, I should say, to really some new awareness, new thoughts. And then we all sort of just disappeared and went into life. And here we are. And so the topic today is really the ripple effect. In this case, this is what happened since we were all impacted. We were in this deep zone of awareness and growth. And then we came back to 30 years of life. What was it? And what was the impact of all of that stuff we went through? And how would we really describe where we are today with respect to our spiritual journey? So love to open it up. Let's just start. We could banter together through this conversation. In fact, today, since we haven't had Jeff on before, Jeff Tebow. I got some great pictures of us in Egypt. We've got an incredible story we'll share sometime. That'll be a session in itself. There was so many lessons on that one journey, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Oh, that was such a cool thing. So,
because I had never been abroad, really. I mean, I've been to Canada, but I had never been abroad. And, there I was in Egypt, and in amidst all of that, incredibly wonderful energy in a culture that I was like, I mean, talk about a tourist, I'm from Connecticut. It's like, oh boy, I am not in Connecticut anymore. And just that whole experience of being enveloped in A, that culture, and B, that incredible journey that we were on was just, totally mind-altering, life-altering, no question.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, because you reminded me of landing in Cairo, and all of a sudden you look out the window, there's all of these young kids with AK-47s wearing them around. It's just like, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
and they, really, I mean, the people guarding the pyramids were armed to the teeth, and I'm like, wow, really? But then of course, some of the politics. So it's just like, I get it. And I can remember after spending the entire night in the pyramid, chanting, singing, drumming, meditating, playing music, just that whole, and talk about a reality. And they came up to tell us we had to leave. They were essentially throwing us out. And this guy comes up to me with the bullet things around his chest, his gun over his shoulder. And I've been playing the flute, and he goes, and he motions to it, and I hand it to him. And I'm like, I'm who knows where I'm at this point. I'm in nirvana somewhere. And he takes it like he was going to keep it. And I was like, no. And I remember just holding the flute, taking it from him and patting his chest. It's like, no. Very special to me, very special to me. And I took it back from him, and he smiled at me, gave me a hug, which was interesting because he had one of those crazy 3-day-old beards they all used to have. And, and then we left. And I was just amazed at that intensity of those moments.
What you didn't know, Jeff, is I slipped $10 in his pocket just before that.
Say what?
See, what you didn't know, that I slipped $10 in his pocket just before that.
Oh, that's good. You always have my back.
Yeah, that's the thing that I picked up from some of that, was a lot of all of that was like, a show of force to get money. You know, it's like, you pay me enough money and then I'll put the gun down, and, you know, you can get in anywhere you want over there with baksheesh or
baksheesh.
Yeah.
And Tom and I.
I'm just joking. It was certainly your love that did it.
And I remember we were playing music at the temple at Abu Simbel. And everywhere we went, they wanted money, which again, I've never been that poor. So I don't know what that's like. And we were playing in that big dome.
Oh yeah.
Because it sounded so amazing.
I have a recording of that, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's on the video.
Cool. And correct me if I'm not getting the story quite right, but this guy came up because we had to leave at a certain point, which we didn't really want to do, but we had to. And he was the only person that never asked us for money. And he said, you come back. He said, anytime. He says, you come back, Abu Simbel. You come back. And that was profound because he didn't. He was just like, come back, because that was ecstatic.
What a time. What a time. So Jeff, here you are, you in this experience. Describe sort of your spiritual journey briefly, and then carry us forward to this last 30 years. What was it like, and what was the impact of everything you learned and did at that point? Did it have an impact on your life?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll keep mine a little shorter than Tom's.
Oh. You mean Tom Sawyer, right?
Although, I will admit, it was that. I was like, oh, I'd forgotten that part.
Well, see, I was channeling Tom Sawyer, and that's just the way it worked out. I mean,
my spiritual journey probably started when I was really little, sitting in the Methodist church when I was a kid, looking out the stained glass windows and looking at the pictures of Jesus and the stained glasses, having this otherworldly communication with God. And I can remember sitting there and going, oh, that's cool. And just, and then, various events occurred. I think that little, as I've said before, recently I was talking to someone about this, that still small voice started speaking at that point. And, life lives. I'm adolescent. I'm a high school jock. I'm having fun. And I go off to college. And I'm having all of those experiences of college, which again, in hindsight, were profound. We can talk about the chemical alterations of one's brain. I mean, all of that stuff, I think, played its part in that. And then when I in college, I took a class. It was a philosophy of religion class. And one of the books that had been assigned us in that class was the Autobiography of the Yogi. And being a very excellent, diligent college student, I never read a thing in that class. But I kept that book because the guy had long hair. And I'm like, anyone with long hair has got to be cool. So I kept the book. And in that class, there was actually a guy that would come to the class, some young guy, never talked to him, but he would sit in a lotus posture. And I can remember thinking, wow, that's presumptuous of him. I mean, sit there in his lotus posture. And so life happens. I graduate. I'm traveling. I'm in a bus with a community group of people. We were a band at that point. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this book. And I start reading the book. And it's fascinating. It's the autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda. And a very classic story for people my age, I think, or our age. And in that book, there's a piece where his guru gives him samadhi, gives him the experience of the essence of God. And I remember where I was. We were traveling through Nebraska. If you've ever been through Nebraska, you know what it looks like. And I can remember, it's rural Nebraska, I remember reading, I'm wrapped, and then looking out the window at this vast expanse of Nebraska, you know, and then I'd read more and then look out at this vast expanse. And when I finished that chapter, I was like, that's what I want. That's what I want. And then the journey was on. Then, you know, anything that had anything to do with yoga, I'm reading it, I'm doing it. I make the joke. I got a book, you know, Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation, I think. No, that could have been it, by Jesse Stern. And there was lists of asanas in the back. And I'm living with a bunch of, we were hippies, the classic, you know, late 60s, early 70s hippies. And we were playing in bars and whatnot. And I'd get up early in the morning, which was probably 10 o'clock for us at that point. And I'd get up and it had a list of asanas, and I'd look at the list and I'd say, okay. And I'd start and I'd just go. And I just went through the list as best I was, no teacher, just what felt appropriate and what was on the list. Took about an hour and a half. And I would sit and meditate, which I loved. I'd sit there and cross my legs and I'd close my eyes. I go, am I meditating now? And I'd look at the book and I go, am I meditating now? I think I'm doing it. I don't know. And I did that for, I don't know, several months. And how old was I? 23, maybe 24, something like that. And I was a big boy at that point. I weighed a lot. I was a big weightlifting. I was a big boy. And I started losing weight. And I've made the joke many times. And I think the divine essence works in very mysterious ways, some of them very overt. And if you want a 20-some-year-old boy to keep doing what he's doing, have a 20-some-year-old girl go, Jeff, you're looking really good. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing this asana. And I'm like, and I'm telling you, having a lady come up, having several ladies come up and go, Jeff, you're looking real good. Boy, I'm 2 hours now. I'm like, I'm all over. And I'm just doing it and I'm doing it and I'm doing it. And I did. I ended up losing a lot of weight. You know, I was back in Gainesville, Florida. We were kind of based out of Florida at that point. I was in, the band, you know, kind of broke up. I was in between stuff. And a lady friend actually kind of dared me. She says, what are you going to do with yourself? And I said, well, I don't know. I did a little bit of massage with a guy that taught me some yoga and some stuff. And he said, you'd be good at it. I said, so maybe I'll do that. And she goes like, if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. And I went, you don't dare me. And I just ran down there. I signed up for the class. And now I'm in massage school going, I'm not really sure why I'm here. I know it'll further my inner journey. That was to do massage. I was like, I don't know. I was working sound equipment then. So I'm like, I'm going to do that. But the universe knows. The universe knows you. You never have to, you never have to worry about that. The universe knows you. So who did I meet? I met a wonderful woman. And she was like, don't you want to move to Cocoa Beach and open up a massage practice? And I was like, okay. So I graduate massage school and I find again, as you look back, I find myself feeling so grateful that the universe gave me tools with which I could utilize to keep doing this inner journey, because I was doing body work. I was helping people. And the blessing was, of course, in that aspect, but they were paying me, which was just, again, I felt just so incredible. And I started doing yoga postures. I'm still doing yoga postures. People were like, well, could you show me? And I was like, okay. I mean, I've never had anyone teach me. It's just out of these books, because there was no videos then. And so I was just like, okay. And I just started teaching people. And that's how I started teaching body work too. Just people going, could you show me what it is that you're doing? Because it's really good. And I'd be like, okay. And so I'll do one massage story because I think it illustrates the point. Is, you know, I was at that point, I was doing a lot of body work. I was doing 3 and 4, 5 sessions a day. They were 2-hour sessions apiece. I mean, it was a lot of body work, and it was an exceptional training ground because I got good at doing it. And I'm working on this guy, and I'm tired. It's like the 4th guy. I'm just like, I'm beat. I'm going to do this. I'm literally leaning on the table. I'm so tired. And but I do it, you know, I do my whole thing, and he gets off the table, and he had been everywhere around. He had had lots of body work, and he was like, Jeff, that's the best massage I have ever had. And I went, wow. At that point, I knew there was something happening that had little to do with me and everything to do with me getting out of the way of the process, of taking my mind and focusing it in a space just to simply allow what was happening to happen. And when I got that, it was just amazing. And it allowed the whole process of doing body work just to get deeper and deeper, to make it into this wonderful spiritual journey that it continues to be. Moved up to Virginia, met wonderful Tom Williams, who has been a mentor to me in many different ways. And we realized through our conversations that we shared a vision, and we decided to open up a place with another friend of ours named Christine Bird. And we opened up a facility in Christiansburg, Virginia. And I was doing massage, and I was teaching some yoga, and Tom was doing Tom's readings and all of that wonderful stuff. Christine was doing nutritional counseling, and we would do services, and we had a thing called Friday Night Lights, you know, where we would do meditations and all this stuff. At some point, Tom had gone down to North Carolina, had met Dan Chesbrough, had gotten ordained, and came back and says, Jeff, you should think about this. And we talked about it. And I think you had a tape that you gave me to listen to. And I listened to this tape. And in the tape, Dan talked about there was no seminary. The seminary was essentially life. That we were born into this process. And that's what we needed. And all you had to do was to ask. And at that point, he was bound to do the ordination. And that resonated. I'm like, cool, this works. And so I went up, I think it was that fall, I'm not sure exactly, but it was very soon after you had come back. Went up to Geneseo to a conference because he was doing a conference. And I said, this is what I wanted to do. And he did that initiation, and the experience was mind-boggling. I can't, you know, it was life-altering, to say the least. It was certainly, now that I can put words into it, you know, it was a Kundalini rising. It was a Shakti experience. I had visions. I was in love with everything that could possibly be. I remember going back to my little hotel room and just being immersed in love, just like, oh my God. And coming back to, you know, to work, I'm just in love with everything that could ever possibly be. I'm just like ecstatic. And so to say that was life altering, you know, incredibly. And the journey was on at that point. And I can't say that I was able to hang on to that because I didn't really have a frame for it. Really. You know, I hadn't done enough personal practice to have a space for that, to hold it, a container, so to speak, or a bowl, you know. And so I can't say that I was able to hang on to that. I am in love with absolutely everything. People could not get me mad. you know, and I can't say I hung on to that. Ask my kids. Anyway, and so, you know, but the other piece of that was that I found a community. We found a community. You know, we found a group of people. I was into crystals and stones. And when I went to those conferences, I'm like, I am nothing compared to some of these people. There were people with huge clusters. And I'm like, oh my God, I got this little piece, you know, and they got these humongous clusters of stones on their chest. I'm like, oh my, they had to hug them like, be careful, you know, because it could almost make you bleed. And it was just this incredible community of people that was involved in all of the stuff that was talked about, changing the world, you know, creating a space where love is the force, understanding that there is nothing but that. And that was huge for me. I was a young man, you know, that was huge. And I learned how to teach. I had taught before, but I give credit to that community of people for making me a teacher, quote unquote. I remember doing a conference, I even forget where it was, and Dan and Tom was there, Carol was there, and Dan's wife at the time, and they asked me to teach something, and I was like, well, that's a little out of my bailiwick, but I'll give it a go. They're asking me, and I remember sitting in front of this group of people, most of whom I didn't really know, and feeling like, why am I sitting here? And looking in the back row, and there was Tom, and there was Dan, and there was Carol, and they were just pulling it out of me. It was a fascinating experience. And I taught. And it opened a door. Because again, I've been teaching ever since, you know, a lot. Tom and I did classes together for years, in search of. I ran a school. I've done yoga retreats. I've organized all kinds of stuff on those levels. And so it really opened that door to what it is to be a teacher, what it is to share that information, which has been profound. And certainly has been, you know, the effect of many years. I mean, I ran that school with a business partner for many years. Did many yoga retreats, many teacher trainings. I've taught many people, which is an incredible blessing. And, you know, and after I would finish those events, I can remember, I guess after doing those retreats, I would always sit down at the end, people would have left, and I would be sitting there, and I would take notes, you know, about what I was feeling and how I thought it went. And it was, I always came back to that same feeling, like in that massage, that if I just got out of the way, it would work. I didn't really have to do anything except present what I was presenting. And at some point I remember sitting there, I'm going, yoga practice is thousands of years old. They don't even really know how old it is. Thousands of years old. It'll work. I can count on it. I don't really have to do anything. Just present it. And it was this, again, that feeling of just getting out of the way, taking that ego part that wants to hold on to everything and make everything mine and have some exercise of control over everything, to just have it let go. And then it flows. The dam opens.
Beautiful. So along the lines of sorry, I can't hear. Mike, you're talking, I can't hear you.
Oh, no, I have this on mute, but yeah, what a great story. And so, yes, just open it. I was just opening it up for thought, comments. So please go ahead, Richard.
Oh, I was just going to say, what have you been doing in the time? If you've been continuing to do that same thing since we were last together as a group?
Yes.
Okay.
The terminology of the businesses that Dan and slash Carol had, or have, I'm not sure where they stand at this point. But as that dissolved and that group, I almost felt like it was this diaspora, you know, this spreading out. That's when, you know, the school at that level really took off. And at that point, I was just totally immersed in what it was to do body work, what it was to run the school, teach the yoga classes, teach the yoga teacher training groups, and raise kids. I mean, I had 4 kids at that point.
Wow.
And you know, what it was to raise them. And you know, and again, we talked before we kind of went on air, you know, living life. You know, I got separated and divorced at that point. I mean, you know, there's just this, you know, life happens. There's just this ebb and flow, this intensity. And for me, you know, what is it to bring, because I can do yoga, I can sit in meditation. I mean, how cool is this? The rubber meets the road when I'm looking at someone who's yelling at me, and have been yelling at, you know, to go, okay, you know, I'll worship the sweet one in every face I see. That's where the rubber meets the road. And, you know, so, you know, the intervening years have just been that whole panoply, that whole arc of kids getting older, kids moving, you know, because my older kids are older now. They all have their own lives, which is such a blessing to see them when I see them. And now I have a 10-year-old getting remarried. We didn't plan on a 10-year-old. God bless the child. But my dharma is as a parent. And so, you know, there I am. And just that whole, just living life. Now I'm partially retired. The school closed. And I do a fraction of the body work, small amounts, you know, if I do 2 or 3 sessions a week, I'm busy. Mm-hmm. And I play lots of music now, you know, as much as I possibly can. If I'm singing, I'm writing, I'm chanting, because, you know, it's something we talked about before we went on air is just the continuing evolution. I used to think that there's some point at which, you know, because I used to want the teacher that was going to put me there. And then I'm going to be there, wherever there is. And I'm not going to have to do anything else. I'll just be there. And that's such a misnomer, because how can the infinite be finite? How can you ever be there? You know? So it's just like this ever unfolding. And so I keep learning, you know, I keep adding aspects. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started getting into doing chanting and mantra stuff. I went on the Kirtan trail, as I called it, and my friend Jayu Tal would come east, and I would go to wherever he was on the East Coast, and I would chant, you know, and you know, got back into playing music again. God bless my sweetheart Rachel, and you know, started putting chants to music and writing music as much as I write music, and you know, and just chanting and singing. So the practice just keeps unfolding. It just keeps unfolding. And which again, I find just such an amazing blessing, because it's not stagnant. It can't be. How can it be? It's impossible. It's just a continuing unfolding. And so now, and I feel very blessed in this period of COVID. And I'm the intensity with which we live under is crazy for a lot of people. It's very intense, and that can't be understated or overstated. Myself, because I was partially retired, it didn't affect me a huge amount. I ended up with more time to practice. And so, you know, I do all kinds of practice, you know, stuff that I had wanted to do for years, but I just didn't have the time. And so, you know, I'll practice 3-4 hours a day sometimes. Wow. If I have space.
So,
between
so
practices,
Jeff, what would
chanting.
you what would you say is your conclusion? If there's a conclusion from all of this work, this effort about life, about your beliefs, about your thoughts, what's the conclusion?
Well, I don't think there is a conclusion. For me, it boils down to how deeply, because it reminds me of something that Tom Sawyer had said. And again, those of you who may have better memories can correct me. Of the times that I sat with him, one of the things that has always stuck in my head, I've repeated it many times, is that at his life review, when he had died, he was asked 3 questions. What had he done? What had he learned? And most importantly, by far, what had he loved? There's a level at which that sums it up. What have you loved? It's easy to, it's easy to love when it's easy. It's, can you love when life is happening?
Richard?
And that, it doesn't
Richard,
mean
sorry, Jeff. I was just going to get Richard and Tom engaged there too. Is Richard, your answer to the same question? Is there a conclusion that you've had from all the work that you put into your spiritual journey?
I got to agree with Jeff that there is no conclusion, but I can say something about what I've got at the moment. And you can hear a whole different thing another week or another year or 2 from now. The thing I got right now along that same line is looking back at my life, all the changes I've been through, looking at what I've done and looking honestly at it, and looking honestly at what I have, not just what happened materially, but what was I doing in that process? What did I learn during that? And what did I love while all that was going on? And now what do I love? And the thing that stuck with me so much from Tom talking about his life review was that the tiny things that matter, the things that mattered most of what someone had done in their life were the tiny little things you don't even remember doing. Smiling at someone, saying a good word, holding the door open, those incredibly small, little spontaneous things. The accumulation of those things over the course of a lifetime will change the world. So I stay aware of that as I go through life, whether I'm dealing with my kids, my grandkids, people on the street, the clerks in the store. I try the people at the bank I was just at have names that are unfamiliar to me, but I keep asking, I want to be able to say it the way you say it, and they smile. What was the one today? Mariangeli. Her name was Mariangeli. Mariangeli. No. Mariangeli. Okay. Mariangeli. And there's a Bakhtiar. The first time I saw his name up there, now how do you pronounce your name? Just like it sounds. Or just the way it's spelled, Bakhtiar. Okay, hold on. Say it again for me. Bakhtiar. He's become a great friend. He started out looking at me like, who's this old white guy? I don't know what he was thinking, but it was a little bit of standoffish. But now I walk in, I see him at the back, he'll wave and I'll wave to him. Those kinds of things mean a lot to me. They really improve my day, and I see it improving theirs. I was at the customer service desk in the grocery store one day, and this woman comes up to me, and she's got a little bit of a scowl, but she's doing her work, and she's not mean or anything, but you can tell that she's tired or overworked, or, okay, yes, how can I help you? What do you need? Da, 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 da. And something happened around me that I could turn into a joke in the moment. I did, and she laughed out loud. And we got done, and she was all smiles. I walked out the door, and the person with me said, "You always have to show off." I said, "No, I just helped change the world. That doing those simple little things is not for me to show off. Look at me make people laugh. It's for them to laugh." Imagine what her day would have been like had that she not had that moment of laughter. Now imagine what it will be that she'll feel that little bit better as she goes into the rest of her day. That's really important to me.
Well said.
There's my conclusion.
Tom, how about yours? And then I'll share my own.
Yeah. I was, well, reflecting back a little bit on what Jeff was talking about, those early days of the priesthood, and all the experiences that we were all having, because that was like, we were immersed in a different realm. We were taken out of our everyday life and put into a club of people that we had missed. I mean, it's like long lost friends or something, like a family reunion. And it was a time of being embraced by each other in a cocoon almost. But it was a time of learning, a time of gathering our forces, and not realizing that what was going to happen is we were going to be dumped out of the bucket, into life, as Jeff talked about, and have to like, okay, now, here's where the real thing is, this is, and having to learn to be human, again, or to be in a different way, to have to integrate into the body that we had with a different understanding. And then to go through this challenge of life to where we kind of are now. And it's interesting that we are, Mike, and this is, saying to thank you to you for bringing us together to start to recapitulate. What I'm thinking now is my conclusion is disillusionment, because I think that, I'm disillusioned, which is actually a good thing, because we've been in a big illusion about what we thought things were. So disillusionment really is getting rid of the illusion. So it's a lot of the things that we thought, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, this is that. And then we realize that our anger comes up, in the midst of all this love and, fellowship and aren't we great? And, our ego and so forth. I know so much, I've learned so much, I have to share with the world. And so it's like, well, okay, but, if I'm sharing what I've been talking in the years following, back in the 80s and the 90s when we were doing a lot of this, of really starting to look at the illusions within myself and in the world in general. So I think we're in a time of disillusionment. And so the conclusion is, okay, now that we are disillusioned, what is reality? What is it that is important? And certainly love is the key word there. Learning to love is not easy. It's not just one of those things you say, oh, love will cure everything and just love everybody and peace and love and kind of the hippie generation. We've all grown up now and we realize that, well, love is not easy. Love takes effort sometimes. And certainly love itself can make it easier for us, just love in general. But we're learning to embrace the reality of this realm of our existence, which is the physical, gross level of ourself. And that part is dirty and messy. And it's like loving your child. Well, you're going to change the diapers. You're going to have to deal with all of the process of raising your child, and it isn't easy and it isn't always fun. But that's where love is hewn. That's where it's raised. That's where love builds. is in that process of learning to love somebody in spite of themselves or in spite of yourself. So my conclusion is that I've learned a lot, um, and I'm maybe rounding the corner of being able to, thanks to the COVID, and I've considered this a sabbatical year for us because a lot of us would not have taken a sabbatical. I mean, there are a lot of things that I haven't done this year that I would typically just be, this would be my second day of being at the History Museum with Fantasyland with my Santa Claus routine and just being immersed in being Santa Claus, for the next 4 weeks, in the way that I had done it. And so now it's like pulling back and saying, well, what is that? Who is Santa Claus in us? And Richard, you know this too, and that we've been taken out of the play. It's like we're given a different part, and we're having to learn. Well, I know the play because I've been in the play for a while, but now instead of being this person, I'm either the support character or I'm the lead character or whoever it is, or I'm backstage or whatever that is. So it's shifting gears in terms of our role in what is going on now. And so almost all of them by now, get a little age on you, you've done it all, So now it's kind of like, well, how do you bring it together and make a character that is a compilation of all of that? And so I kind of see that as what we're doing here is that we're becoming one. We're bringing our part back. We're bringing our experiences together. And thanks to you again, Mike, for bringing us together to make us whole again, but from bringing our perspectives. And I think that's, as we listen to each other and gosh, yeah, that happened to me too. And I remember when you did that, and that was interesting. And I learned a lot from that. And you taught me something when that was going on, and I'm beginning to pull that together. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Tom. You hit on a lot of, everybody said key points, and Tom, you sort of brought it together for me is when you said the appreciation for this get together, and I echo at first, thanks for sharing that, and I echo that same thing is because here all of a sudden again are these number of light bulbs that have gone off listening to you guys in this last whatever it's been 45 50 minutes. And it's yeah, no, I could really see that. And I didn't know that about you, but it was really, that's what this group served 30 ever whatever years ago it was this chance to really be with others, to connect, to hang, to let my hair down, be who I was. And then I had to go out in life. And that's really my story is following that I could say, Jeff, I really envied you you were one of these men that really went out there and had all these men attributes, but had this real spiritual nature about yourself, this soft side of which I got to know. And man, I want to be like Jeff, because my experience has been with, men and the traditional male and sports. I never fit in, and so it was great. And along with that, Tom came along and Richard, all of you in this grand play of things. And so then after that, when I left, I thought for sure I was going to just be destined to go and live in some commune, and just do things. But it wasn't. It was this 30 plus years of corporate America. And it was tough. It really was tough because I was always a square peg in a round hole, or a round peg in a square hole, whatever it was. But I always just felt out of place. But then it was really interesting because what I picked up of all things, what was my role? My largest role there was an educator, a teacher. And even though I was teaching traditional business content, I'd always receive feedback from these few people at the end it wasn't so much what you shared, but your stories and the other things that really impressed me and made me think. And that seemed to be this common denominator. And I think back of early on when I learned, was asking that question, what's the meaning of life? And there was the author of Everything I Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I forgot his name, but he had, when he was asked that question, and it was a joke seemingly from the audience, and he said, no, he goes, let me really answer that. And he pulled a mirror out of his pocket and he caught the light, the side, and he goes, we're all beings and we have the capability to really connect with light, and figure light is that part of us learning love and the positive aspect of it. And then as we learn to really connect with that, our responsibility using that mirror now is to go and shine that light into the darkness. And that's how I see my life, is 30 years of where I really didn't want to be, but it was incredibly instrumental for really bringing the light into the corporate America that's, of course, as we know, filled with ego and the dark side of human nature and materialism and competition and everything. And my reputation sustained through that, which as I look back, has always been this person who connected. I could go and talk to, I can open up with and talk. So even though I never really liked where I was at, I would have sort of wanted to sign up for a different life, I realized that this was my life. This was the chance to really bring that light that I had learned into a place that was filled with a lot of challenges. And the biggest challenge for me was never giving into that. And I did a pretty good job at that. I really did. And I lost a lot of what I could have made in terms of money or promotions because I really didn't aspire for that. But what I really gained was the ability to be able to share that connection with others. And that's my conclusion, is I do talks on the spiritual journey and I do personal growth talks. And the question comes up, sort of the meaning of life. And I sort of proactively said is that there is meaning. I don't care to put any real detail to that. And I know there's a lot of different definitions or structures, and I've heard a lot. And there's some things I really connect with, other things, whatever. But what I do know is there's meaning to life. And as a result, that's a thought that is so incredibly comforting, that has gotten me through so many challenges that I've experienced in my 64 years of life so far, is that conclusion has been this weather vane that has helped me to really, center myself through all of the challenges that I have been in. And that's the meaning that I hope, and what I suggest to others who are thinking about journeys like this is that if you're able to come to grips with a statement like your own conclusion that there's meaning to life, it's so much better because there's less fear, less concerns, less worry, particularly as I'm sort of into my last quarter of life, I probably presume. I'm okay with things. I'm okay with the concept of dying and death and not letting that drive my life or run in fear. I'm now actually starting to get to the point where I am starting to let my hair down and sort of be more of myself again, which is new, novel experience for me. But that's sort of where I've come from and my own conclusion.
I like that too, because there's every human being is this interesting, fascinating drop ray of the divine light. And when I use the word love, I'm not so much thinking about the ushy gushy, oh, I'm so in love with you, et cetera, et cetera. Which is why I usually capitalize the word. Because it's the substratum of everything, if that makes sense. And it's not about not feeling anger. It's not about not feeling pain. It's not about not, a being with the traumas of life. We live in a world of physics. If I stand in front of a tsunami, it's going to crush me. We live in this world. you know, if you're going to fall in love with someone, there's a good chance they may leave for whatever reason. Well, that's going to hurt. Now, understanding that love is this substratum of everything that infuses everything, what that does is allow you to experience the pain and not attach yourself to it. It becomes like water that comes off of your body. You know, you don't have to immerse yourself in the pain and let it become you, because you can create your own story. You have your own individual light to shine. Your meaning of life may be different than mine. It may have a different flavor, but if we're touching the source, it's going to emanate from that same substratum of love. And then you're free. You know, you're free to live. You're free to have the pain. You're free to have the joy, because you don't have to be attached to any of it. You can live it. How sweet.
Yeah, and we're all part of each other. I mean, it's like each one of us is not independently. I mean, we are seeming like our ego seems to think that I'm me and you're you and all of that. But all of this is a combined consciousness ultimately. And so when I'm listening to the three of you, I'm listening to myself in a sense. And it's, I'm learning from myself by listening. And that's been an important lesson for us, is to go to these conferences, Jeff, and have somebody there that listens to you, you know, and that honors you and pulls it out of you, like you said. And that was the blessing, is that people were seeing you as important, you know, and that you had something to share and you had something. And Richard, you do that when you get pull people out of their harshness or their worry into laughter. And so that we can laugh at these things and not take them so seriously all the time. And, you know, and Mike, you're pulling us together, you know, and going to the corporate world and trying to bring light into that space of head space, you know, and workspace and all these figures and facts and all this stuff is, we're taking on these roles to bring that light, bring us together, you know. So I think bringing us together and for reminding us of that.
I'm reminded of something we said, I think, before the recording started, about chop wood and carry water. You do that before you start your process. You go through this wild, amazing arrangement of experiences, and you end up chopping wood and carrying water.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Tom's favorite movie, The Razor's Edge. He went through all that stuff through the whole course of the movie, and then finally, you know, has that confrontation with the woman he should have married, and then leaves to go back to New York, to back to America. And Tom's comment was, that's when his real work started.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of where we've been.
Mm-hmm.
Putting the rubber on the road, as you say, Jeff.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road. One of my favorite teachers, a teacher, a woman named Ananda Mai, and she would talk about, and people would talk about, well, which goddess should I do? You know, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And she would hold up her hand, and I'm going to do it like this. And she'd go, well, there's this one, there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one, but they all lead home. You know, and I'm like, it's so simple. It's so simple if we would just see. Because Tom, that's, you know, we are. It's all, we're all just in this life. And we all are, in essence, one. And the illusion of this separateness creates such anxiety, such drama. Most of us seem drawn to.
It's so fun, come on.
Well, that's part of who I am. I have to learn from, I mean, the challenges that of accepting another person for making a stupid statement or for not knowing something that you think they should know is like frustrating, because it's like, why don't you know that? Which is like really saying, why don't I know that? You know, why don't
Right.
I know that? You know, and it's a, why is it that part of me not know that? You know, so how can I help that part of me know it is our challenge. And so how can I bring the best out in the thing that I'm most frustrated about? How can I love that so that I can help it then enlighten?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
if I'm really angry at someone, it's simply an aspect of myself that I'm either not looking at or choosing to ignore or whatever. And that if I can, turn the mirror and see, it can make it much easier then to address that in this person or event, as well as myself.
And that is yourself.
And that is myself, right?
So you're trying to, loving that part, that other person is helping you to enlighten, or us to enlighten, to bring wisdom and to bring love into those spaces that we have the most challenge with, you know.
And it's a great word, enlightened. I read a poster once. It said, angels fly because they take themselves lightly.
yeah.
That's great.
I went, I like that. It was in a bathroom.
Ah,
This is one of the reasons, Tanya talked about getting us together, and it's really thing that really inspired me and I recognized is that there's all the new generations out there today, and at least for me, I haven't heard a lot outside of maybe some, yoga classes or the things of which there's anything that represented the sanctuary, the beloved, the group that we were with today. And again, it could be happening. I haven't seen or heard about it, but I see this absence of real growth in spirituality, this kind of conversation that we were fortunate to have. And that's what really prompted me, again, with this pandemic and sitting here and contemplating and meditating to really start this, was the fact is that, we need to really get this conversation going again. And there's a lot of people out there, and I know in working with the younger generations, too, is they've got such high exposure to technology and the other things here too, and they're confronted a lot of major challenges, in the world and the earth today, and earth changes. We were a part of that. I know that in terms of Egypt and our own love, but they've got a lot of real challenges, and they're going to need to find new ways to work together. And I really want to find ways to help to role model, connect, teach, in effect, these new generations coming in, with the kind of tools that we learn to help them sort of go forward.
I kind of think of it as like we often talk about our angels, our guides, and our teachers as if they're on somewhere out there. And really, I think that we've been prepared, and I don't mean to pump us up in some kind of way or another, but I think in a real sense, those of us that have gone through this and have made this conscious effort and decision to integrate with society and with people during this time are visible guides and angels and teachers. Rather than being out there someplace, we're right here. And so the wisdom that we have gained in whatever effort it is because we have immersed ourselves like Jesus did, immersed ourselves in the physical form so that we could be helpful. And so he said, do like I'm doing. So that's what we're doing. We are the body of Christ, and that we are bringing that all together, but in multiple forms, and not just one being or one person, but multiple people, and that we're out there being the body of Christ to try to help somebody because we've been there. We can say, I went through that. I know what that's like. And we can honestly say that.
This reminds me of a Tom had championed a book for a while called The Works of Invisible Helpers by Amber Marie Tuttle. And she was a woman who lived in England around the 1900 or so, who could psychically connect with these stories of disembodied helpers being of assistance to humans in the body. And he really enjoyed the book, but what he said was, now's the time for the visible helpers, just as you're saying, Tom.
Yeah, I really like that statement there too, and I see that because to me, despite being absorbed in a corporate America, the one thing that I always had a knack for is being able to step back and sort of see the whole, see the synergy, and just see that with respect to life, the world around us, and it's very evident to me is here we are in this pandemic and all the people that are suffering, but what's the biggest stimulus to growth? Pain and suffering, right? No pain, no gain. And I stepped back and I really I thought about it a lot and I said, we're nothing less than a major wake-up call to all of humanity. There is so much good that's happening amongst this chaos to really reorient ourselves. Just think of this year alone. And I sort of related it to the analogy. In fact, this is what I still do today. I write these kinds of conversations in the business media. So on LinkedIn and these other kind of business things. And it's sort of interesting because, there's no real expectation, but over time, there's people that connect and there's comments that are made about just appreciating that there's somebody with this more deeper perspective in this world of corporate America. But we were really just bantering and talking about all of the good that's really coming from this. And here this year of 2020, and 2020 was used for hey, 2020 is great eyesight. It's the word given, hey, I've got 2020 eyesight, which is great eyesight. Well, guess what? We all are getting better eyesight as a result of this. Think of the protests coming in, the election, just the whole pain from with respect to the pandemic. We're seeing now the good, bad, and ugly. So we're all gaining this real 2020 eyesight into humanity now, with the idea and beginning to think about what can change. And I see that all of the time with respect to people in these even little glimpses is, what? Following this is, I don't want to go back to the traditional workplace. I like this working at home. There's better work-life balance and be with the kids. I've got a better relationship now with the kids, for the first time. And that I'm really connecting with my family again after all of this time. So I really see a lot of benefit. And I think that what you just said, both Richard, Tom, is true, is that we're being called. I feel that way, to really connect. And guess what? The world's connecting virtually right now, right? And we're able to start reaching out and connecting with the younger generations in the platforms that they're using to begin to be able to share thoughts, comments, stories that really can be of help to them in ways, Richard, you said this up front, it's in ways that we don't even know, that's happening. And I know I can say for this session helped me. This was terrific. I feel recharged like I did in those days of the group, because I'm with people that I can really connect with. So I appreciate you guys, first of all, being here.
Well, and be able to talk about life and life's journey in a deeper manner, to peel back that superficial layer of I've got to make X amount of money in order to do X, Y, or Z, because I don't say that's not important, but to peel that back, because, to go back to Tom Sawyer, that was not the important stuff in his life review. Matter of fact, if I remember correctly, it was, it was almost like dismissed as just the flotsam and jetsam of living. It's what's underneath. And all of us have learned methodologies and techniques to do that, because from what I'm hearing and seeing, we've done that. It's like we've learned and we've utilized what we've learned in order to try to live our lives to the best possible way we could do it. To the highest, instead of the lowest common denominator, the highest that we could achieve at any one moment. And yeah.
Have we covered everything?
I think we left something out, but I don't know what it is.
Can't find it either.
We're in search of it. I'm gonna go.
In search of.
We got to redo the whole thing again. We got to do another in search of, and maybe we'll find it.
Yeah.
Of course, we were at Yogaville, and we were introduced to Satchidananda as the In Search Of group, and he did it in his wonderful Indian way. And have you found it? Have you found it?
But
I left it to Tom to try to respond to that.
well, we could be ourselves. I think we were with him in a different way than he normally is, because he's normally with all these aspirants, all these people who follow him and, oh, master and all this. And we were able to just sit down and laugh with him, as a person.
Yeah.
It's true.
Kind of like what we're doing. We're all like masters, but just like, hey, let's not take ourselves so seriously, right?
He did not take himself seriously.
No.
I love the trees in the background, Richard.
Thank you. A friend of mine took that picture. It hides a lot of crap that really is behind me. I'm putting up a good front here.
Well, guys, we're over the hour, and I really appreciate it. I look forward to us getting together again, and keep your thoughts open. I know Richard and I have talked about, he has a distribution list, which is great, and my thought is, maybe we just open up this kind of discussion, with a larger group of people and see where it takes it. And then if you have any thoughts, ideas in terms of, different groups or audiences that these kinds of conversations can help. I think that's what we do bring, is the fact that, we've got this life experience under our belt, and it's an opportunity to really share the journey, to share the experience with it. So that's really my thoughts. I know I've got a couple more sessions, couple other individuals that have sort of just popped up by hearsay already, to just have a session like this here too. But thoughts, ideas that you have. And first of all, I'll go, let me just go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording. Before I do, is there anything anybody wants to say, if sort of formally, for the recording before close it off, and then we could ban it for a couple more minutes?
I just heard a really important thing. If you guys remember Laraji?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, he was just on the radio, and the interviewer asked him, is there anything else you would like to add? And he goes, yes, I would like to add.
That's Laraji.